My name is Aynsley-Hartwell. I'm the CTO of a company called Utopia. And I'm very happy to be able today to introduce and announce the fact that Utopia is actually developing and releasing some stuff to help you with your data governance in the EAM space. And I know there's been a lot of talk during the show about the importance of data governance for EAM data and the objects that people use in the EAM processes. So I'm going to actually talk to you today about what we're doing with that using the tool from SAP called MDG, Master Data Governance. So what I'm going to take you through today is a very short intro to what is EAM. I'm sure all of you know what EAM is, but I thought I'd actually give you a little bit of a background as to why the whole thing around data governance in the EAM space may be a little bit more difficult than people think. I'll give you a little bit of an overview of what the SAP MDG product is. Some of you may not have seen that or heard of that. So I'll actually take you through what the MDG product is and what it does. Then I'll talk to you about the MDG solution that we're developing for the EAM objects using MDG. I'll take you for a quick preview of the data model that we're using for the equipment master, so you can see how comprehensive that is. And then I'm actually going to do what everyone says you shouldn't do, right? Which is run a live demo at a conference on a wireless network with no backup. So it's like acting with animals and children, right? They say never act with animals. Well, I'm actually going to test my chances and actually try to do a live demo with the system today. Link out to our cloud environment, so it's not even running on it's actually completely running on the cloud. And then I'll talk to you about our try and buy program. So I'll give you a chance to try this stuff out before you buy it. Okay? So, EAM. SAP has lots and lots and lots of products that help you manage your assets. It's not just the PM module. You know, 5-6 years ago, when someone said EAM SAP, the only thing they thought of was the PM module. Now there's a heap of other stuff that SAP actually provides as part of their portfolio to help you manage your assets. And it's not just the actual management of the physical asset. They have stuff around energy and environmental management. They have stuff around your OH&S compliance. They have all of that sort of stuff now. So they actually do offer a complete solution in your whole asset management space. The bit that I want to talk to you today about, though, is actually the asset information management. The tools and stuff that are available for managing the asset information. I'm not talking about how to process work orders. I'm not talking about how to plan and schedule work. I'm just talking about how you keep your master data clean, so that all of those other processes, that there's very good other tools, SAP tools, non-SAP tools, very good other tools that can be used to do that, actually work the way they're meant to be. They're meant to work. All right? So when we look at the whole integration of the tools that SAP provides, they have some really good tools, which is the SAP Data Services Center, for doing all the data quality stuff. So when you actually are starting from scratch, cleaning data, getting it into your system, you can use the SAP tools to do that. You can then use the other tools like SAP PLM and then the SAP MDG for assets that we're talking about, and the Information Steward to actually monitor the quality of your data and manage that when it actually gets into your actual operational system. So they have quite they actually have that process covered from end to end, right? Specifically in the data space, they have some really cool tools around stuff that we use. So if you have a look at the core MDG for EAM, then you can have custom domains for that as well. You know, the little baby custom domains. You can also add on top of that your own custom validation. So you can actually say, hey, I don't like that rule that comes from SAP, I want to use my own. Okay, go on and add it in. Right? And I'll show you what they look like in MDG, and you'll see how easy it is to do that. They've also got stuff now like the whole extended ECM from OpenText. So if you're trying to manage documents and all that sort of stuff, you can use the extended ECM from OpenText to do that. It's much neater than the old LiveLink application, much better integrated into SAP. They've also got the visual enterprise stuff. So this is where you can actually see the 3D models of your plant and go for a walk around and do all that sort of stuff. So really cool stuff. And then of course on top of that, they've got the analytics and process monitoring stuff. So the bit that I'm going to talk to today is around this SAP core, the bit that's down in the bright purple, the MDG for EAM stuff that we're actually developing. And this is so important because the EAM module is at the center. See, I'm the maintenance guy too, right? The center of the world is maintenance. All right? Forget the accountants and everything else, center of the world is maintenance, right? But it connects to all the other modules. It connects to HR, it connects to finance, it connects to MM, it connects to PP, right? So you've got to manage all of those sorts of things. And if you actually have a look at the complexity of the actual linkages that you get in EAM, this is a diagram from when I was actually an SAP customer. I was actually in a telco in Indonesia. This is a diagram of the linkages that we had between the different modules, right? So the yellow stuff is all functional location stuff. There's a whole heap of stuff around materials, approved manufacturer's part list and so on. And the colors there actually represent the owners of the information. So you can see there's like 7 or 8 different groups of people that need to be involved in managing that set of data. It's not one person. You know, this group owns this bit, this group owns this bit, this group owns this bit. You have to have a process in place that allows you to have that different ownership, because that's what the business requires, and still be able to manage it. Right? But it's not simple. When you have a vendor master, there's typically 2 people that need to be involved in that, right? The purchasing people and the finance people. Okay, done, finished. Here you've got 7 people: engineering, procurement, maintenance, PMO, projects people, capital projects people, all sorts of people involved in that. So it's much more complicated than just managing things like vendor master and customer. So what we find is that asset information is one of the most complex sets of data that we see. It's not simple. Okay? The creation and the maintenance of this data has a lot of independencies. Right? You can't create a bomb unless the material master exists first. Right? You can't add the bomb to the equipment unless the equipment's been created. You have to actually have the functional location in place before you can install an equipment. So lots of independencies involved in this as well. Right? And SAP covers this with multiple tools. Right? Information steward and data services play their part in that, in the back end of that, in the cleansing, standardization, that sort of stuff. And now what we're going to talk about is the Master Data Governance tool and the role that it plays in orchestrating basically the process that you're going to use for managing this creation of your asset data. Okay? So a little bit of what SAP MDG is. SAP's Master Data Governance is a suite of tools that was developed by SAP. It sits on top of and is part of ECC 6. So it's not like the old SAP NetWeaver MDM, which was completely separate, completely different stack, completely different infrastructure, completely different organizational structure as well. This is built inside on top of ECC 6. It's actually built on the ABAP stack, right? So it's very, very well integrated with SAP. It uses the standard SAP business workflows. So if you've already got people that can do workflows, you can do the workflows that are in MDG. They're not going to be any different. It uses the NetWeaver business client as the user interface. So the WebBIM Pro stuff as the user interface. So it's reusing a lot of technology that you've probably already got in your organization. You don't have to go out and add another whole set of technology that people have to use. A lot of it is actually reusable from the technology that you've already probably got in your organization. And what that does for us is it enables us to do reuse as well. So if you've already got a workflow set up, right, you've got to give it a workflow number, and you say, hey, I want to use that workflow for approval of equipment master, no problem. assign that workflow to the equipment master. You're now reusing a workflow that you've already got. You don't have to go out and create a brand new one, right? So you actually get to reuse a lot of the stuff that you've already done as well. And one of the things about it is that it's also very, very tightly integrated, right, with the information steward and data services tools. So if you've already used data services to do cleansing on some records, you can actually say, okay, great. As a step in my workflow, I'm going to go out and I'm going to call that data services job and I'm going to cleanse the information that was put in there, standardize it, whatever you want to do, and just basically reuse what you already had for your pre-cleansing jobs before. Right? So it actually comes with a set of standard workflows, and the normal steps are go in, maintain, validate, approve, and then replicate. A lot of people think, though, that MDG can only be used with SAP, that you can't actually use it to govern data that's in a non-SAP system. This is not true. It is a lie to say that you can't use MDG to govern data in non-SAP systems. It's harder, because there may be data models and stuff that are different, but you can actually extend the data models in MDG and use them to govern non-SAP systems as well. So the replication step down here, right, can actually be used to actually syndicate out to non-SAP systems as well. So that way you can actually use it as a central management tool and actually syndicate the data out to multiple systems, both SAP and non-SAP. So what you get out of the box from SAP are the standard domains that SAP actually supports out of the box, are the financials, business partner functions, so customer and vendor, and material master. And they also give you the ability to go and create other objects, or custom objects, as they call it. Right? And that's what we've done. We've actually gone and pre-configured a set of custom objects using the standard functionality that's made available by SAP, the way it was meant to be used, right, for doing this governance, and actually created these for the EAM objects. Right? So what we've actually done is actually gone and said, okay, EAM needs some specific requirements. It's not vendor master, it's not customer master, it's got all of those different linkages that we talked about. Let's go and create something that is very specific to EAM, that builds in a lot of the business rules that we know EAM people need. Right? They're not just sort of hairy-fairy stuff. They're actually stuff that we know, that we've seen during our data migrations and our data quality work, to say, let's give them a preset of rules, and they can choose which ones they want to implement and which ones they don't. So it comes with a heap of stuff already set, and then you can add your own on top of that. You can choose to use the ones we put in the system. You can choose not to use the ones we put in the system. So what we've actually done is we've added all of these in. We've actually we're building these domains out, the equipment master, function location, MRO bombs, work centers. We're doing also some things that are not maybe quite EAM. We're putting object links in there, task lists, those sorts of things. We're also doing things like service master, right, as well, because we know that service master and material master go hand in hand. A lot of organizations now outsource a lot of their maintenance, right? And they need service masters in their system to be able to actually outsource that. So we said, okay, why don't we add service master into the list as well? So now we've got service master being added into that list as well, and a growing list of objects that we're actually going to extend. And we're working really, really closely with SAP on that. We're actually gone through the process of integrating with the MDG product development group. So we're working with the guys in Germany, and we're doing a lot of the design and the build for these objects, based on our experience and our EAM knowledge. And then we're involving the SAP team in the testing and the validation, so that we can make sure that when we actually release this out to the market, release it out to you guys, that it's gone through the SAP QA as well. So it actually looks and feels and operates the way it would if it had actually been delivered by SAP. And eventually it'll actually be sold by SAP, so it'll actually end up being supported by SAP as well. But in the meantime, we're going to actually provide that support. So this is actually what you get when you actually get the EAM MDG domains. You get a complete data model. You get the setup of different change requests. So a change request is the object that gets used to manage a change inside MDG. So you get different change requests for create, for delete, for update, those sorts of things. You get a set of business rules that we've already actually set up in the system that you can use as a starting point. You also get a set of workflows. and I'll show you some of those today as well. You get a replication model, you get a whole implementation plan, you get all the documentation that goes with it as well. Right? Now there is a prerequisite though. This stuff actually requires you to have an MDG custom object license. Right? So you have to actually buy the MDG license from SAP and have the custom object license, and then our stuff actually sits on top of that. Right? And this is our actual development plan. We're actually rolling this out as we speak. So Equipment Master, which I'm going to show you today, is actually already available. You can actually buy it today. Just come over to the booth and we'll badly sign the purchase order for you. The function location one will be released by the end of March. And then we're using a model in SAP called the Flex model for those two. But we're actually converting everything over to another model of MDG, which is called reuse. So by June, we will actually have equipment, function location, MRO, bombs, work center, and service master actually available in the reuse mode in SAP MDG version 6.1, which is the current version. Right? SAP has a newer version, version 7, which is currently under ramp-up, right, and is due to actually go to general availability in May, June this year. So in parallel, we are actually going to also start converting all of our 6.1 stuff over to version 7, because we know some of our customers will have version 6.1 for those standard objects, and they don't really want to upgrade until it's generally available, and they don't want to be part of a ramp-up plan. So we'll actually have, we actually have started the upgrades to version 7, and after June, July, we'll actually be releasing version 7 only for the subsequent objects, so that we're always keeping up to date with the current SAP plans. Alright, so the MDG Equipment Master data model. We've actually taken all of the tables that you actually use in the standard SAP Equipment Master, and we've actually set them up in MDG, done the copy and stuff that you need to do to set them up. So we've basically covered pretty much every field that you actually see in your Equipment Master. So it's a complete model. You can then decide what you're using, what you're not using, what you want to display, what you don't want to display. Now one of the things we're able to do, which I'll show you, is we can actually display fields that are actually typically hidden from your SAP system as well. So one of the ones that we've actually had a customer ask us is, they want to choose whether to inherit things like cost center, that sort of stuff from the superior equipment or the superior function location, or choose not to. They don't want to let the system decide that. They actually want to say, hey, on this particular one I want to choose, on this particular one I want to inherit. So we've actually made that, that field available in MDG, and you can actually tick it and say, hey, I want that to be inherited or not. And because we've made it available in MDG, you can now write a business rule to actually set that field, rather than just relying on the standard rules that are in SAP. I'm sure all of you know that as soon as you overwrite something that's inherited, that link is broken forever, right? And you can't change it. You have to, every time you deinstall and install, it no longer updates. We can now actually say, no, we don't care. If you've overwritten it, that's fine. I'm going to leave it inherited. So next time I actually move that piece of equipment, it will actually inherit what it got from its new functional location, rather than living with the rule that we've all lived with within SAP. So you actually access it in the standard SAP menu system. You actually launch the NetWeaver business client. Excuse me. Alright. And just these menus are because I've got access to everything. I can configure, I can run material master, I can run vendor master, whatever. But typically what you would do is you would really only get a selected sort, a selected choice for these, where you may only get display mode for, say, customer menu, you get a requester mode, you get a specialist, you get a data steward role. So for different roles, you get different menu choices. And that's how we control what you're allowed to do. And the good thing is, because it's integrated with SAP, and integrated with the security level as well, if you don't have access to see a customer master in your standard SAP, even though you might have it here, when you go to click on it, it comes up with that, you don't have access to it. So it still actually uses your SAP security as well to make sure that you're not doing anything in MDG that you wouldn't be allowed to do in in the standard ECC system. So we're going to go down here and I'm going to actually fire it up. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with the NetWeaver Business Client, but essentially it's the new UI for SAP. It's a much friendlier version than the old UI that you used to get in the previous versions. It's very much web sort of look and feel and so on. And just when you open up the MDG screen, you get different options. So you get the option for single object processing, multiple object processing, you have options for reporting, you can actually then also have options for everything for doing replication, mapping, and all sorts of other stuff. And you also have options for data load. So one of the good things about MDG is out of the box. You get single object processing, you get multi-object processing, so you can actually do what they call an upload file. So if you've got an Excel, if someone gives you a request for 8 or 10 items, you can actually create a little file and upload it into the system and manage it as one change request. So you can actually fix the 10 objects and it checks all 10 objects for you at the same time. But it also has an import function. So you can also do bulk uploads or bulk imports as well, right? And when you do that, the great thing about it is it's checking all of the rules that you would do if you use a single entry system. So it checks all of those. Anything that passes all the rules, it allows and sends out to SAP. Anything that fails any of the rules, it creates a change request for you. Right? So it's sitting there saying there's something wrong with this record and this is what it is. Please go and fix it before I allow it into SAP. So it gives you that extra validation step, right? And you know it's using exactly the same rules. I mean exactly the same rules that you use, right, if you were creating it manually. So you know that that import function then is making sure that those rules are being enforced as you go. One of the things with that is you can then have your workflow set up so that when you do a bulk upload like that, it actually goes back to the guy that sent you the information in the first place and says, hey, these 20 records failed because you didn't provide me with this information. Please fix it and resubmit it. So you can actually send it back as part of the loop, right? So it's actually good. It actually enables you to do that. So what I'm actually going to go and do is I'm actually going to go and create a request for a brand new equipment master. And it pops up a little screen, and there's a little bit of I'll show you something that's actually quite cool. Okay. So this is something that I wanted to just point out before I move on. I'm sure you've all gone through the process of creating a material master or an equipment master in SAP. Got 3/4 of the way through it, and then found out that you didn't have the information that you needed, and that particular field was mandatory, right? So you've either gone and put a dot in it, right, saved it, and then had to come back, or you said, oh, hell, and actually gone out without saving the data, gone found the extra information, and come back in and actually create and redid everything that you just put in. In MDG, you don't have to do that. If you get to a point, right, where you say, oh, I don't have that information, and I need it, all you do is save it as a draft and come back to it later when you've actually got the information. So I can show you how easy it is to do that as well. So I'm actually going to go and create an equipment master here. So I'll actually pop up and it will show you all the different fields, right? So this is the head level of the change request. This is actually saying, why am I doing this? Give me a reason, right? So I'm just going to call this. Okay, I'm going to give it a priority. And the priority gets used for managing the SLAs on the workflows. So you can set up different SLAs for high priority, medium priority, and so on, so that you can actually track how long people are taking to do stuff. I'm going to give it a reason, a due date, okay, and a new equipment master. And then across the top here, we have all of the different tabs that you use. So this has got all of the basic data in it. It's got reference data, it's got manufacturing data, material stock data, warranty data. And we can actually change what this screen looks like. It's not quite drag and drop, but pretty close to drag and drop to be able to move these move these particular fields and everything around. So if you're not using one of these fields, we just take it off the screen. You don't see anything. So you can make it very, very specific. I can even make it specific to the role that you've got. So if one person needs to see a field and another person doesn't, we just hide it from the person that doesn't. If one person needs to be able to see it but not change it, then we just grey it out so they can't change it. And that's set up by role in the workflow. So I'm actually going to go and create an equipment master here. So what's happening here is this is actually now going out to SAP and bringing in the drop-down message. It's not a copy, it is actually the stuff that's in SAP, right? So it's not as though you've got a copy of it and there's a chance of them becoming unsynchronized. I'm actually pulling it in, so I get to choose here, so I'm going to choose electrical. And I'm going to select technical object type. In this case, I'm going to cheat because I know which one I want here. And I'm going to go through and I'm going to set authorization to it. And this is one of those ones where here, as I said, I can now choose whether this field is going to be inherited, whether it's going to be coming from a reference object or it's going to be entered manually directly. So I can choose now for that, whereas normally in SAP you have no choice, right? This is fixed, right? So now I can actually set up. Now I can default this if you want as part of it as well, or I can actually let you choose it. It's up to you. You've got the flexibility to do that. So this particular case I'm going to actually transfer. And I'm not going to go on into everything else until I get down to the including manufacturing. So we're going to have a line. And then I'm going to enter a material number. So here I'm actually going to... Let's say that that's all the information. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go and check. Okay, let's check whether this particular record is all my business rules. And the material group that you've chosen doesn't match with the technical object type that you've chosen. So it says, hey, the MDM material number is 1328. It's an electric motor. But when I come back up here and I say, oh, technical object type is motor electric. And I say, oh, they should match. Right? But if I actually go and have a look at the actual material master for 1328, it actually says I'm material group Z-Rail map. So I've actually got a validation rule set up in the back that says, hey, unless you're these particular material groups, you're not allowed to be assigned to that technical object type. Right? And I'll show you what those rules look like, so you see how easy it is to actually do that. Right? So what you would do then is here in our friendly thing, you would say, okay, I obviously don't have the information I need, so I'm going to go and I'm going to save this as a draft while I go out and find the information that I need. So now it says a draft has been created. Okay. Now I actually know, for instance, that I have some other material. Power and the drivers that you're out. So when I look at that, I say, okay, I'll go back in here, and I'm actually going to put in and go up and check again. No errors found, right? So now I know that that material matches the technical object type. So a lot of people look at that, and I can actually set those sorts of rules up for any combination of fields you like. So you can say, hey, technical object type, material class, catalog profile, whatever you want can be set up as a set of rules and say, only these entries are allowed between these fields. If you were trying to set that up with user exits or field exits in SAP, you would be there forever, right? So what I'll do is I'll show you how those rules look, and then I'll show you the workflow after that. So just let me go back in here. So these are the equipment validations that we've actually set up to show you that, right? So I have an equipment structure. So these are the rules that we've actually set up to do that check that I just showed you on material group and so on, right? I can put it into edit mode. So I've actually got two rules set up. And this is the first rule that I've got set up. And this is what they call a decision table rule. And that's really, really simple. All it is I set up a table that says, okay, this combination of 1103 for object type and material group 26101 is allowed, it's true. This one is true, and none of the others are allowed. So if I try to put anything else against 1003, it comes up and says no, not allowed, right? So you can set up a table like that, and the good thing is if you set that up, it's a simple table. You can actually come up here and say, lo and behold, import from Excel. Right? So you can actually do a bulk upload of even your rules. You don't even have to go in and do individual entry of the rules. You can do a bulk upload. The number of columns that you use for this combination, right, is not limited to 2. I don't know what the limit is. We haven't found it yet, but we've got some of these things set up with 5 or 6 different columns, and it's fine. Not only that, you don't even have to. You're not even limited to having one result or one action to take. You can actually have multiple actions to take as well, right? So you can actually say this combination means this, and I want you to also go and do something else. So it's actually very powerful when it comes to that, right? And it's just a decision table. I don't know if you, when you did your engineering degree, if you did the engineering degree, when you did all of the logic tables and everything, you know, the X's and the 1's and all that sort of stuff, and you did the simplification. This is like that. It's just like a logic table. This, and this equals that. This, and this equals that. This one's false, this one's true. Right? So it's really quite simple to set up. You don't need an ABAP programmer to do this. You can do it like I am sitting here. You obviously need to know the system, but you don't need to be a techie as an ABAP programmer. So that's one rule. One way of setting the rule up, and I'm only going to show you that one and this one. Here's the simple version of that rule that we just said. So you can actually put it in logic as well, right? If equipment type is assigned to 113 and it's either one of these two, okay. If it's not either one of these two, say, give a message. Right? So you have a choice. You can have like the sophisticated decision tree type stuff, or you have really simple logic. And same thing, it's just an if-then-else statement, right? No complex programming, no setting the fields and everything up front and all that sort of stuff. Really, really simple. Right? Very easy for the business SMEs to actually give you those rules and get them into the system. They don't have to be sophisticated stuff. And to turn them on and off is just as simple as hitting that button to disable it, hitting this button to enable it. So what we're doing as part of the out-of-the-box stuff is we're giving you a set of rules. So say, okay, the sorts of options that people typically will want for checking technical object type against material group looks like this. Choose which one you want. Turn this one on, turn this one on, turn this one on, turn this one on. So give you a set of pre-configuration that you can actually use. Right? So that's like in the back end. This is how it actually enforces those validations. And there's all sorts of validations we can do. We can do value validations, we can do pattern validations, we can do lookup validations, we can do string compare validations, a whole heap of validations you can do using MDG. And if that's not good enough, then I can actually do a web service call out to data services. And on a whole data services job that does whatever level of complexity cleansing validations you want to do, and then feed it back. So it's not just limited to what I can do with simple statements like this, because sometimes that's not enough. Sometimes what you need to do is more complicated than that. So you actually need to go and use the other tools that SAP provide, and they are actually integrated enough for you to be able to do that. So if I come back to this has actually been saved. It's actually been saved now. So now I'm actually going to submit it, which means it's ready to go. Okay. And if I come back here and go into, okay, here's the change request that I just created, right? 258, if you remember the description, demo equipment create, right? So because I've got every role set up, all I have to do now is I actually go in and say, okay, I'm actually evaluating whether it's right or wrong, whether I actually need it or not, right? It'll pop up, okay? And you'll notice here, the status of the change request does not allow changes. That means for the next person in the line, not allowed to change anything. Can only reject or approve, right? If I reject it, if I disagree, it will come up and say, tell me why you disagree, and then it will go back to the person who created it. But in this particular case, just for the sake of the demo, I'm going to agree. Right, so you've approved it, shut that down. If I actually go and refresh, you'll now see that the status has changed to be considered and approved, so we have another approval process. And I wouldn't normally recommend that you have this many approval processes. I'm just sort of showing that it can be as simple as one if you want, or it can be as complicated as what we've actually got set up here. So in this particular case, you go through 2 functional approvals. And now we're going through a technical thing, so it's actually gone to the basis person and say, yeah, okay, let's go and actually execute that change. Let's put it into my live SAP system now. Right, so it'll come up again, and then we'll do a finalized processing. And refresh. And it gets a status final check approved, and off you go. So those workflows, as I said, can be as simple or as complicated as you want. You don't have to stick with the standard ones that you get from SAP, or even the ones that you get from us. You can configure them and customize them to your own. So that's essentially the MDG tool, right? That's what we're offering. We're offering those things out of the box for the EAM objects. As I said, they look, feel, operate the same way as the stuff that you get for SAP for the standard objects, but they come with some additional rules from the work that we've been doing in the EAM space for the last 11 years. You don't have to go and buy a separate box and all that sort of stuff. Don't need an SAP license. Off you go, and you can do it as a try before you buy. So you can do a POC, test it out, add some of your own rules, see how it works, right? We're offering that for all of the objects based on the actual development cycle that I told you, and even for the standard SAP stuff as well. So if you want to look at customer and vendor, we can do that as well. And then after you've actually done that, basically you can take that and you can convert it over to a real production system. Because the way SAP MDG is set up, it can actually be a hosted model as well. You can actually have the MDG system sitting on a hosted cloud environment and actually updating your production ECC system. So you don't even have to move it across into your own environment if you don't want to. You can just continue using the same environment, upgrade it obviously for CPUs and all that, copied for dev and QA so you've got a full environment, and just keep on doing it. So that way you don't even have to go and redo any of the rules that you've tried during your POC. Just leave them go and put them into your actual live production environment. And that's it. Questions? Yes?
Yes, I have a question. How does your inherit work with the button for install with data transfer or dismantle with data transfer?
Okay.
Does it override it? Or?
So it depends on the way you set it up as to whether that particular function of install with or install without is included in the MDG. Oh, okay, sorry. So the question was, how does the inheritance button in MDG work with the install with inheritance or install without inheritance option in the GUI itself, right? Okay. So it depends on whether you've actually included that in the MDG process or not. You could have it actually override that, or you could just have it accept what was done in the GUI and just continue. You actually have the flexibility to choose which one is the master. What you do in the GUI or what you do in MDG. You can choose. The question is, in the change request, do you have the old values and the new values that you can actually compare? The answer is there's full history set up, so it actually automatically keeps a change log, so you can actually say, okay, this was the old value, this is the new value, and you can do the compare side by side. No, unfortunately it's not in the display. It's actually in a separate section of MDG where you actually go and say, show me the changes, right? Unfortunately, it's not side by side. Yeah, it's similar to the change logs. It's a bit prettier than change logs, and a bit easier to actually navigate through. But it's a similar thing. It's actually out in a separate thing. The good news is I can actually accept them though.